You know, when it comes to combat sports, the promoters are often as famous as the fighters. Look, in wrestling, y'all know the wrestlers, but everybody really knows Vince McMahon. Boxing, of course, is the famous Don King. And mixed martial arts, well, they've got their guy too. It's this one, Dana White. All right, so what makes Dana so special? Well, when he became president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, that's back in 2001, the company was $44 million in the hole. Fast forward to 2006, and the UFC set a pay-per-view sales record, raking in more than $220 million in revenue. So how did he turn all that around? Well, when Dana came on the scene, mixed martial arts, or MMA, was a fringe sport. It was banned in 36 states. The pay-per-view providers wanted out, and the fights were considered too bloody or too brutal or violent. They're basically all-out brawls, and that people weren't going to get into it. Politicians were morally outraged.
It was the most hated sport on the planet by the most powerful people in the United States.
So Dana decided to react. He cleaned up the rules. No more eye gouging. You can no longer kick your opponent in the head when he's down. He brought in weight classes, put on a judging system, and started to market the fighters as personalities. He emphasized their athletic ability, and he also made the fights more crowd-friendly. Think, lights, music, ringside girls, like wrestling, essentially.
He has all the potential in the world.
Then he took another step. He created a reality television show called The Ultimate Fighter. Yeah, it's simple. You put 16 fighters in one house, let them go at each other week after week. The last man standing gets a six-figure UFC contract. That show became huge, and The Ultimate Fighter TV show is what took the UFC to the mainstream. People who weren't normally into that kind of brawl, all of a sudden, got into the personalities. And before you could tap out, the UFC became the fastest-growing sport in America.
Big kick, dead kick. Oh, he's hurt. St. Pierre trying to finish it.
He's big time hurt.
Everybody, the head of the UFC, Dana White. Thank you, bud. What a huge journey UFC has been on. If you think about those, I remember the very first pay-per-view to what it is now. Right. It's just night and day.
Yeah, well, for us it's been 9 years. It feels like 90 years to me. I'm always on the road and traveling. I think I've been home like 6 days the last 2 months.
Man.
I leave here tomorrow and go to Hawaii. It's been pretty crazy.
Are you going to get to go hang out with Magnum or surf or something?
No, I'm going there to promote the fight.
Promote the fight.
I'm not going there to hang out. We've got crazy full itineraries. This thing's going a million miles an hour, and as big as it's gotten, not only here in the United States, but globally now. Now we're going global. We're doing fights in the UK, France, Italy, Spain, the Middle East. We're doing fights all over the world.
When did you get a sense? I remember the first few pay-per-views, there was a lot of talk about it, and a lot of even the traditional sports media kind of went, oh, whatever, this is just either a cockfight or a bar fight or something that's in a ring. Right. But then something happened where all of a sudden UFC became a much more mainstream event. What happened?
The Ultimate Fighter reality show is what took it to the next level. Once this thing got on television and people were able to see what great athletes these guys are and how exciting the fights are, and that they're not what all those misconceptions said they were. That's when the whole thing turned around.
See, I think the Ultimate Fighter show also brought a lot of women into the
It's unbelievable how many women got into it. When I put this thing together, it was a no-brainer. Males 18 to 34 on Spike TV. Yeah. Doing fight-type programming, piece of cake. Never in a million years did I expect the women to get as involved in it.
But you had to buy the time. Didn't you have to pay for everything? Because Spike was like, when you pitched it to Spike, they weren't.
Yeah, they said, yeah, we like it, but we're not going to pay for it.
Thanks for nothing.
We paid for season one. We paid $10 million for season one ourselves.
Wow.
And while we were shooting it, we didn't even know if it was going to air.
How do you build stars in this league?
Well, obviously the Ultimate Fighter has been huge for building stars, but it's gotten to the point now where people like a guy's personality or whatever, different than boxing. In boxing, they'd build this guy up to where he had to be 47-0 with 46 knockouts. And if he lost
32
one fight,
of those fights were stupid tomato can fights.
Exactly. I think that the fight fans and the consumers got a lot smarter and a lot, got hip to what boxing was doing. And it's really what I used as the blueprint of what not to do when building this business.
Well, and you were a boxer.
Yeah, exactly.
Were you a good boxer?
No, that's why I'm the promoter now.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. I think what happened, what I found when I first started to watch Ultimate Fighting, what I found really interesting was guys in your league are allowed to lose.
Yeah.
They're allowed to lose and they're allowed to come back. And in boxing, you lose and you're kind of done.
You're done. It's true. There's so many different ways to win and so many different ways to lose in this sport that people, listen, if you're a fight fan, at the end of the day, all you care about is you want to see exciting fights.
Yeah.
Boxing got to the point where you get all excited for a fight, you get all pumped up, you and your buddies would sit down and watch the pay-per-view, and when it was over, you'd go, they did it to me again.
Yeah.
I got bought into the hype, and I got into it, and the guys didn't fight.
Not at all.
Didn't fight.
So did you learn from a guy like Don King, or Duva, or did you learn from Vince McMahon on how to build this?
It was a little bit of everybody. Growing up as a big fan of boxing, I did learn from Don and all the other guys that were before me, and from Vince too. I looked at this thing. We built a brand. We built a brand with real fights, and the brand plus the stars equals success for everybody. The thing with boxing was they had no brand. They had to live fight by fight with all these different fighters. It was too fragmented.
Right.
And at that time, you'd have these fights that didn't happen when they were supposed to. The promoters couldn't get together and make the fight, or they'd happen 5 years later than it should have.
Right.
For example, BJ Penn versus George St. Pierre. Lightweight champion of the world versus the welterweight champion of the world. Their first fight was very controversial, split decision. Now we want to find out who the best guy in the world is. They both got the belt. They're both in their prime. They're both ready for this fight. It's the perfect time for this fight to happen, and we're making it happen.
How do you lobby a government to look beyond their preconceived notions about what ultimate fighting is in mixed martial arts?
Well, it gets to the point eventually where how can you deny us? We've owned the company for 9 years. Our success record is phenomenal, fastest growing sport in the world. Mm-hmm. The economic impact we have when we come into a city like this is astronomical, okay? And our health and safety record is perfect. There's never been a death or serious injury in the UFC. Which I don't think badminton can say that, okay?
A badminton in the ass, man, could be absolutely death-defying. It is, but I guess you can understand why some people are a bit weirded out by it still, because I'm a 36-year-old man. I watch a beatdown. I'm fine with it, because I like sports because it has consequence. How did you have to bring in those medical requirements or bring in extra rules to make this a viable sport?
Here's what happened. Originally, the way that this whole thing started was a bunch of television guys got together and said, let's answer the age-old concept of which fighting style is the best.
Shark versus
boxer
bear,
beat a wrestler,
right?
yeah. Kung Fu guy beat a karate guy. And they put on this pay-per-view. And it did killer numbers, They rivaled WWE in boxing at the time when they did the first one. So they said, let's do this again. They did it again and again. In a million years, these guys never imagined that they were creating a sport. So what we did is when we bought it, they ran from regulation. They didn't want to be regulated by these athletic commissions in all these different states. We ran toward regulation. This many people want to see a freak show. Yeah. This many people want to see a real sport. And these guys are real athletes. It is a real sport, and that's the way we treated it, and that's how we got to where we are today.
What's the UFC's position on drug testing when it comes to athletes?
Well, not a lot of people know this, but realistically, us in boxing, we're the only sport that's actually regulated by the government. Every time that we put on a fight, the government comes in and tests these guys, not just for steroids, all kinds of drugs.
Really?
Yeah. We're regulated by the government.
The first star that I sort of saw building was Tito Ortiz. Mm-hmm. That guy started outside media attention. Mm-hmm. What's it like with you and Tito now?
Not good.
No?
No. We hate each other bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Was he trying to unionize the rest of the fighters?
I don't know. Unionize, that guy couldn't balance his checkbook. He's an idiot. Never mind unionize.
No, well. What happened there? Because you'd think that it would be a great partnership, right?
Well, when he was good, I had to put up with his shit. Now that he sucks, I don't have to.
It's a tough job being a promoter, though, right? Because you almost have to be an asshole if you want to do your job because you can't please everybody. Do you feel that way?
No, you know what? It's not. You don't have to be an asshole. Chuck Liddell, 12-year friendship, partnership, everything with Chuck Liddell, Matt Hughes, even BJ. As crazy as BJ is, I've had a great relationship with BJ George. There's so many guys that, you don't have to be that way with. But when you're the boss, you're never going to be the most popular guy. You don't always make the popular decisions that everybody's going to love. But I can tell you this, I've made a lot of guys a lot of money.
Now, one of the things that ruined boxing, and I haven't seen it in UFC at all, is the manager that takes over the story. It's usually not the fighter that's as bad as you imagine. It's the people who around them.
It happens. I call them the Klingons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
a
way
guy
better
comes
than
in, right? A guy starts to get successful. The Klingons come right in and cling on to him. And as soon as he loses, they scatter like roaches when the lights come on.
Do you
know
have
what
to
I
be
mean?
the guy? Do you have to counsel your fighters then? Do you like? But it's an awkward spot for you because you want to take care of them, I suppose. But you also have a business to run.
I try to, but here's what I do. I don't like managers and I don't like agents, so I don't deal with any of them. And I have a one-on-one relationship with the fighters, and I try to keep that relationship. And I let them know. I'm not shy. I'm not afraid to tell people how I feel. I let them know what I think they should do. The hardest part with fighters is taxes. You know, you hear about a lot of these guys getting taxed. Actors too. Happens to actors and everybody else. You get this check. You know, you have this big fight and you get a check for $6 million, and you're like, I got $6 million. No, you don't.
No,
you got $3 million, okay?
Exactly.
Yeah. And the government gets the other 3.
No kidding.
But these guys run around and, start spending it. And then when the IRS is looking for it at the end of the year, they're going, oops, I owe taxes.
No kidding. It's at UFC 94. GSP versus BJ Penn takes place in Vegas, Saturday, January the 31st. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Dana White, everybody. All right. Stick around. The hour will be right back.